Hey guys, I'm Sydney,
Hi, my name is Jingling.
and this is our 2316 final project. So guys, has your mom ever told you that video games are gonna rot your brain? Well, mine certainly has. But I watch my little brothers play video games every chance they get, and they're still happy functioning members of society. So we were wondering, is this statement really true? I mean, we see it on the news all the time. You hear about teen violence, teen pregnancy, and tragedies. Is the rise of technology and socially acceptable exposure to violence at a younger age causing outbursts in teen behavior? So we came up with three hypotheses for our research. The first one was an increase in teen violence due to seeing lots of violence on the news and media. Our second one was an increase in teen pregnancy because we think violent video games would encourage reckless behavior. And lastly, we expect an increase in the production of violent video games, considering that this genre is very popular among young people.
So this is our three databases. The first one is from the United Nations about the global fertility rates, and the second one is from US Department of Justice of the juvenile arrest, and the third one is our game API. So this is just a brief glance of our three data sets before we cleaned it. Now it's the section for our data cleaning process. Firstly, for our downloaded dataset, since we want to look into juvenile pregnancy rate, we limited our research age range to 15 through 18. The dataset also included the global pregnancy rate for all the nations. So we excluded all non-OECD countries and limited it to 35 countries only. After that, we dropped all null values and all other unnecessary columns such as alpha code, parent code, etc. At last, we group by the data frame by year and the region. And so this is our clean data downloaded dataset. As you can see here, it has been grouped by the year and the region with pregnancy rate from the age 15 to 18.
So for our web scraping API, we had a couple of inconsistencies we had to fix. There were two columns with not a numbers. One of those was the rape column, and that's because it's US law that juvenile criminal records are private until they are adults or wiped. Also, we had commas and the number of juvenile arrests for numbers in the thousands. And lastly, we had percent signs and the percent change columns. So we took those out so we could turn those strings into floats or integers that we could work with. The API was not that hard to clean, but however, we had some issues when we were working on the insights. So what I did was I got the total API and I sorted it by the genre. So I researched all the different genres that were considered violent in video games and parsed through those. However, when we were doing our insights, we noticed that some of these games had repeat genres. For example, if a game was a card game, but also a role-play game, the game would be counted twice. So we had to do some research on how to fix that. Lastly, we had some issues with the date on the API. So the date was listed as the year / day / month. And what I did was I took out those slashes so we could just sort by the year. So here is a quick glance at our cleaned crime data and our cleaned API. So from our data, we were able to come up with 5 different insights. So our first insight was counting the number of times the word war appears. And we thought this would be interesting because from a psychological perspective, words can have a big impact on someone's behavior, and war has very negative connotations and violent connotations. So we had a little bit of trouble getting this data, but we were able to do some outside research and use the .stir.contains method to find our data. And after that, we just used a simple group by to count the number of times war was used per year. We expected to see an increase in the number of games using the word war, but we actually saw a decline. And we thought the reason for this would be because mass shootings and other violent crimes have increased in the past several years since 2017, and we thought video game developers might be trying to be sensitive to their audience and refrain from using words like that, such as war, in their titles. Our second insight was counting the percent of games that were MMORPG, which stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Games. So we just did a simple group by and dots count to see how many games this was, which turned out to be around 41%, which was surprising considering there was 20 different violent genres in our data. We then compared this to our teen crime data and saw that teen crime seemed to be decreasing as time went on. And we thought this could be because teenagers were expressing their anger and violence using these MMORPG games because they know that their actions are not real.
For insight number 3, we decided to examine the correlation between the number of violent video games released in the United States from 2011 to 2020 and the juvenile pregnancy rate in the US. We observed a clear decline in the juvenile pregnancy rate in the US over time after cleaning the data and combining the two tables, the table of the fertility rate and the table of game API, into one. Additionally, we discovered that the number of violent video games released fluctuates, reaching a peak in 2015. The prevalence of pregnancy rate and violent video games, however, do not appear to be directly related. Therefore, we have come to a conclusion that the release of violent video games has little to no impact on the juvenile pregnancy rate in the US.
For Insight 4, we decided we were going to average the number of violent and nonviolent crimes from the years 2011, 2016, and 2020. So we used a little bit of reverse mathematics and the group by method .count to get our data, and we actually saw a negative correlation between violent video game production and crime rate as the years went on.
For our insight number 5, we looked into the pregnancy rate in 5 different OECD countries, including US, UK, Australia, Canada, Japan, and Mexico, from the year 2000 to 2020. To determine whether there is any correlation, we used pandas to calculate the percentage change between the pregnancy rate. We discovered that the overall trend shows that the pregnancy rate has been declining over time in all of the nations. The biggest overall change was specifically seen in the United States. The fact that more people have access to the internet and are subsequently becoming more educated over time can be a common factor that may be behind this phenomenon.
So we came up with 3 visualizations about the number of games, the crime rate, and pregnancy rate change. So for our first data visualization, we grouped our games by the year to let us see which years had the highest number of violent video games, which was 2015 with the number of releases being 38. We also used this chart for insight number 4 to compare it to our data about crime. Our second data visualization was comparing the percent change from 2011 to 2020 of teen crime arrests. So as you can see, everything has gone down except teen murder and embezzlement, which was a little bit surprising, but overall this data does not support our original hypothesis that violent video games lead to violent behaviors.
For our third data visualization, this is deriving from our insight number 5. We can see that the teen pregnancy rate have decreased overall in all nations. However, Mexico's rate appeared to have decreased the least, on an average by about 20%.
So here's our summary file. We just made it with the PD Excel writer method and put all of our insights onto 5 different sheets of an Excel file. So overall, we found no correlation between the release of violent video games, teen crime, and teen pregnancy. If we were to try to find a possible correlation, we would definitely need more time and more research. For me, my biggest struggle was the data visualization part. I struggled the most with knowing what would be good data to use to visualize, and I learned that during the process of cleaning, it's important to keep in mind what you want to visualize, so it'll be easier when you get to that step.
For me, my biggest struggle is drawing insights for number 5. For some reasons, all the number become object after I extracted from the Excel file. I learned that the differences between these two by the process of debugging.
All right, well, thank you so much for watching our video, and thank you for a great semester in 2316. Bye.
Bye.